Is the cheapest legitimate action camera on Amazon any good? Let's find out. We kinda already answered that though. Disregard the question. Welcome back to reviewing the cheapest. That's where we go out and we find the cheapest tech, the cheapest cameras, the cheapest toys, the cheapest whatever. We just go out and we find, is cheap stuff any good? And this is kind of a crossover episode today, whereas, you know, normally most of you probably know I run the YouTube channel, The Everyday Dad. And this is a camera that I have been talking about on that channel for years, and that's the Lite. Now this camera, when it was initially released, was about $100, gives you 1080p 60 frames per second. It's a fantastic action camera. But today I wanted to find out over here on Reviewing the Cheapest, now that it's about what, like 60, 50 bucks, is it still any good? You know, roughly 2019, and we're gonna compare it to what's probably the most expensive. It's not really an action camera, but we're going to compare it to one of the most expensive cameras that actually has a flip screen, the Sony RX0 Mark II. Now, normally we would do a big unboxing. I would show you everything that comes inside of the package with the Lite, but this is basically everything that comes in the package with the Lite. I bought this thing almost 2 years ago, so I've lost a lot of the parts, but as you can see, can you see, like, this thing is beaten up because I have used this thing to within an inch of its life, and it's kept going. So let's really hop into it. So the build quality is probably the least impressive thing about the well, now that it's like 50 bucks, the build quality is not that big of a deal, but when it first came out, it wasn't the best. I mean, it hasn't like changed its materials since then, so it still feels kind of rough. Things that you'll notice is it does have like an open microphone, it does have an open speaker. It's not waterproof, but a big plus of the physical construction is this 1/4-inch tripod mount on the bottom, so you can mount to just like regular camera gear, which I use for this all the time, and it's one of the biggest things that does over GoPro, is GoPro still doesn't have the tripod mount on the bottom, which would probably compromise their waterproof nature, so I'm okay with that. But if you're not gonna be waterproof, you gotta have a way to mount it straight to a tripod. But the best thing about the Lite, besides the really good image quality, is the interface of the camera itself. Like, this is high quality, like touchscreen operation, where you can very easily like transition through the menu systems with just a few touches of the screen. As you can see, I'm not even looking at what I'm doing right now. I hope I'm doing things right. But yeah, it's so easy to just change the settings that you want, which is something that even more expensive action cameras have a problem with. Now let's contrast that real quick with the Sony RX0 Mark II, which is a very, very expensive camera. I mean, there is a reason that it's expensive. It does have some incredible video capabilities, but it is far more expensive than the, you know, the little Lite. But the construction is insanely better. Like, the construction on this thing, if it's not fully metal, like, it definitely feels like it's worth the price tag. And the price tag on this thing is, ding! Which you could buy a whole bunch of these for the price of one of these. But look at that flip screen. Is it worth it? But yeah, the construction of the RX0 Mark II is impeccable. It's one of the best feeling cameras I've ever felt. And this does have a 1-inch sensor, much like the RX100 Mark V that we're recording on over here. This has a 1/2.3-inch sensor, which is pretty standard for action cameras. So you will get better low light capabilities and just better overall image quality out of the RX0 Mark II than you will the Lite, and we'll find more about that outside here in just a few minutes. But yeah, the build quality is great. This is fully waterproof and crush proof. It does a huge thing that the RX0 Mark II has, is it has a built-in audio jack, which the Lite does not have. But I mean, GoPro doesn't have it either. This is one of the very few cameras of this size and kind that actually has a built-in microphone jack, which is incredible. It continues to take the micro SD card, much like the Lite does. Takes the micro SD card right over here. But the Lite has a few benefits over the RX0 Mark II. I know it sounds crazy, but if you're just looking for something that's easy to use, you have to go through this menu system, which is incredibly detailed, and it's much like a full-featured Sony camera, much like the Sony a6400 one right here and the RX100 Mark V. It does have a lot of features, and those features are incredibly useful, and again, makes for some very awesome image quality and audio because of that. But it is pretty fiddly to get around, and it's fiddly to use. So the big plus of the Lite is definitely going to be ease of use. It only takes a few taps, you're ready to go. You hit record, you're good. Which another thing that's a big benefit of the Lite over the RX0 Mark II is this is a depth of field. Because it has a 1-inch sensor, there is a part of the video that is in focus, there's a part of the video that is out of focus. The Lite, everything's just in focus. Because it has a smaller sensor, it can get away with that. It will do higher shutter speeds than the RX0 Mark II, which could make your video like really choppy. It's gonna be hard for it to stay inside of the 180-degree shutter angle rule. But the RX0 does have things like, will it do like face? Will it do my face through the... But as you can see there, it does have face tracking autofocus. So you press once, it turns green, that autofocus is locked in. Now it is only autofocus single, it's not autofocus continuous like most of Sony's other cameras, so you will, once you hit record once, you will then have to do the autofocus again if you have missed focus. But it does look, the image quality out of the RX0 Mark II is incredible. But this isn't about the RX0 Mark II, it's about the Lite. So when it comes to the Lite against the RX0 Mark II, like I said, a few of the benefits, this has the easy to use touchscreen, just makes it insanely like, I wish more things had a touchscreen as easy to use as this. The battery life I find is much better than on the RX0 Mark II. All of these extra features eat batteries, and the battery that it comes with is a tiny little NPBJ1 battery, which is crazy. I mean, look how small that battery is. The battery on the Lite, this is an aftermarket, but even this is 1400 milliamp hours. This is 700 milliamp hours. That means this thing, it just doesn't last very long. Like even the RX100 Mark V and the A6400 are not very good on batteries. This thing just chews through this battery. Like I have to recharge this thing all the time. This you don't have to worry about as much because it's a bigger battery. This has less, like, I know it's gonna sound crazy to say that less features are a good thing, but in this case, especially for the cheapest, this is pretty good. For 50 bucks, pretty good. Okay, so we've covered the physical features, we've talked about the screens, unboxing the things. Neither of these comes with very much, so there's not too much to do with unboxing. So we're gonna hop outside. I would try these indoors, but neither of which work very good indoors, so that's not really gonna be a very good use of any of our time. So I'll see you outside where we do a quick, like, it's not gonna be vlogging, but we're gonna do a quick, like, outdoor test. If you wanted to use either of these as like a family outdoor, like, get-together camera. So see you out there. So let's set up both cameras just so we can kind of show you like how easy. I was talking inside about how easy they are to use. Let's put it to the case. The first up we're gonna do is the Lite. So we turn it on, touch screen's already on. Video, settings, resolution, 1080p, 30 frames per second. We're doing this in 24 frames per second on the other cameras, but we'll have to do 30 on this one. So we'll do 30 on the RX0 Mark II just to keep it all fair. So it's already set up. Tap, tap, set up, done. Let's turn on the RX0 Mark II. Turns on pretty quick. We do have to change it to 30 frames per second to keep it fair. Final Cut Pro will kind of like smooth it all out. So it shouldn't look too janky when we start editing, but let's say 30p. So they're both set to 1080p, 30 frames per second. Again, it's easier to just tap, tap, tap than try to work your way through the Sony menu system, but when you talk about ease of use, being able to see yourself, that's a pretty darn handy feature to have. And then to make it a little more, because I don't have like an ND filter or anything on this, on the RX0, so we're gonna have to change it to, we'll put it in auto mode since the Lite is basically on auto mode. Okay, so let's start again. Focus is good. Recording. So yeah, this is the video quality from both of these cameras. Again, the Lite's like 50 bucks. The RX0 Mark II is $700. So yeah, there is and should be a bit of a difference between the two, but as you can see with the sun behind me probably destroying both cameras, I think the cheapest is actually probably the better option in this case for a few reasons. One, especially if you're starting out and you're just looking for like a camera for family stuff, or you're just looking for, ooh, I don't know what's going on there. If you're looking for a camera for family stuff, or you're just trying to like start out in like video production, online stuff, gotta go with something that's cheap and just easy to use and good enough. I started out with the Lite as like my one action camera, and I've been using it for years. It is a phenomenal. The RX0 Mark II is great and all that, and I do like it more than I thought I would. But part of the problem is like right now, it's totally exposing for the background and not my face, so you're not gonna be able to see me. It's a little more fiddly than I would like for, especially on reviewing the cheapest. So I do like saying, hey, this is cheap, this is good to get. Hey, it's not cheap, it's not good to get. But comparing the cheapest against the most expensive, I would actually recommend the cheapest in this case, because you will get more use
out of the Lite than you will on something like the RX0 Mark II. There are better options out there. If you want to spend that much money, let's talk, because there are way better options out there, especially if you're trying to buy your first camera or your only camera. In the RX0, like I said, the battery life is terrible. The battery's about to die, so let's stop. So in summary, as we're escaping the wrath of the sun because I slept in a little bit today, I think the Lite, you know, again, I've been using it for 2 years. I think it's a phenomenal camera, and I highly recommend it. Even though it is the cheapest, it's the cheapest of like the good, right? So there's cheapest that we've seen that are just like garbage, but this is like an actual budget. There's a difference between budget and cheap. This is like an actual budget camera that I would have no problem recommending, and I've been doing so for years over on The Everyday Dad. Thanks for watching.